Good afternoon, everyone, and hello and welcome to our webinar on the future of the modern workplace with Windows Virtual Desktop. This is your chance to learn all about Windows Virtual Desktop and how Soltech and Microsoft can help transform the way that you deliver desktop and productivity solutions to your workforce. It's good to see a number of people on the call today, and hopefully we'll have some content that you'll find interesting and engaging. There's a slight problem with the Q&A functionality on this particular meeting at this time. You should be able to add questions via the meeting chat, but if there is any problem, then we'll also have a form that will be sent out to you shortly after this webinar, along with that will hopefully give you some links to some further information that will answer a number of your questions, but there'll also be an opportunity on there for you to ask any questions that aren't answered for one reason or another. Without any further ado, my name is Robert Smith and I'm the Alliance Manager at Microsoft at Soltech, and it's my responsibility to manage our relationship as a Microsoft partner with Microsoft themselves, and I'm joined today by my colleague Aaron Pryor, an industry executive from Microsoft. Aaron, would you like to say hello?
Hello everybody, thanks for the intro, Robert. Great to have you all on board. Yeah, I'm Aaron Pryor. I work in the Microsoft Central Government team, and as my little bio there says, I was 25 years a civil servant in tech strategy as well as policy. So I've been around in sort of both the legal end and also some of the procurement routes you may know and maybe love. And I'll be talking a little bit later about the future of the workplace as it relates to government.
Perfect, thank you. So just to quickly run through and cover off the agenda, today we're going to explore why desktop virtualization and more specifically Windows Virtual Desktop has such a strong business case for use inside governmental organisations. As Aaron alluded to, he's going to talk about the challenges facing organisations in a sort of current and post-COVID landscape, and then I'm going to talk you through a little bit of a high-level overview of Windows Virtual Desktop itself, and then show you a quick demo of that service in action. Then we'll tell you also what further resources are available to you. And then, as discussed, we'd hoped to wrap up with some questions, but if for some reason that isn't possible, we'll make sure that we can capture any questions that you have and answer all of those afterwards. We also have although this session is not designed to be a technical deep dive, we do have some of our technical consultants available today as well, that can answer any technical questions that do come up. So if it is possible for you to enter questions into the meeting chat, then please feel free to do so. And as I mentioned, if that isn't possible, then we'll be able to capture those details for you later and answer all of those questions. So just to give a little bit of insight into who Soltech are and sort of why we're on this call. I'm not going to boil the ocean in terms of telling you everything about our organisation, but I think it's suffice to say that we've been working with Microsoft now for over 27 years. We've transformed from a traditional sort of IT company into a cloud-first company. We're a Microsoft Gold partner in multiple disciplines, including cloud platform and cloud productivity. And we've got excellent referenceability across the depth of governmental organisations, both within central and local government. Just to give you a little bit more insight into sort of a snapshot of the customers that we work with. Again, not going to go into detail on any of these at this stage, but it's really just to highlight to you that we do have excellent referenceability across a number of different governmental organisations and experience delivering remote desktop services and Windows Virtual Desktop into a large number of those as well. So with that in mind, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Aaron, who's going to walk you through the future of the workplace. Aaron.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robert. So over the last couple of months, I've been involved really deeply with central government at the highest level and its response to what the future of the workplace is like. I've seen that a couple of people on the attendee list today also have the pleasure of being with me on some of those roundtables where we get together with government and we talk about what are the challenges facing the sector. We discuss it with some of the main technology thought leaders across the land. And this slide basically is our summary of those key burning issues that we're seeing at the moment. And Robert and the guys are going to talk a bit later on about how these kind of relate to the solution Soltech are offering. But what's critical, what we're seeing across this workplace discussion, is the impact on budgets and the forthcoming spending review ahead. We're in a financial year for the public sector where obviously the spending round gave very limited budgets with a limited opportunity for those traditional upfront financial asks that we get through the spending cycle. And it really is a time where everybody needs to look towards those revenue or resource budget savings and where they can be found across the sort of the larger element of government. So England as a whole, we're in a situation where the financial reserve for the country, for the government pot, has been exhausted by the expenditure on COVID. So we are in a landscape where borrowing has had to now dramatically increase, and obviously we're looking to some of the initiatives the government's outlined, such as the building initiatives and others, to boost the economy post COVID and try and get some sort of recovery. So there really is that focus on savings being paramount. As we go forward into the cloud world, one of the things that's come out for our future of work roundtables is the concerns around, well, if I'm moving to a cloud infrastructure, how do I maintain the sort of security, governance and standards that I as a public sector body need to have? You have extremely sensitive information in a lot of cases, citizen data, all sorts like that. And it's absolutely critical that these things are well maintained. You can't put a foot wrong, really. And we're frequently told how those kind of questions around security and governance in the cloud world aren't always clear for the public sector, and certainly the answers aren't. And one of the great things about working with obviously a company like Soltech is that they're there to help you guide through some of that landscape. They are thought leaders in this area, and I'm sure they'll be able to give you some great steer and direction along that path. We're obviously looking at going into a world where at the moment it's still quite uncertain that what the percentage of staff working from home versus returning to an office will be. Through the workplace discussions we've been, it varies organisation by organisation. We've seen it said that as many as 50% of staff will remain as home workers, right down to sort of 35% or potentially lower. And obviously you need reliable and dependable infrastructure upon which to work to give everybody that equal experience and the opportunity to be productive, while of course remembering that you as public sector bodies have an equality duty to your staff. So you need to ensure that any manner in which they have to work meets the equality standards set out in the Public Sector Equality Duty and the Equality Act 2010. So there is that whole consideration around, as we move into what could potentially be a hybrid working environment with some of your staff in, some of your staff out, mixed economy meetings, how are you ensuring that everybody is on the same level playing field despite what their personal needs and accessibility requirements might be? Because obviously, like I say, under the Equality Act, that's something that you guys need to consider in the decisions that you make. And of course, there's the whole issue of legacy technology. This has been a key government driver throughout the last year. Alex Chisholm at Civil Service Live this week himself was mentioning once again the importance of tackling the legacy infrastructure debt. That is seen as one of the main places where, from a tech point of view, money is still being spent that could be saved and could be utilised elsewhere. But it's also not only the technical debt, as in data centres and physicality. It's also what's the legacy debt around processes as well, and how can automating these processes potentially help you drive down those revenue costs in this time of what will be austerity. And lastly, when we think about the future workplace, and probably quite a big one here really, is that how do we manage the outcomes and outputs of our staff, of teams, of whole business elements and the organisation as a whole, when a certain percentage of that workforce isn't going to be immediately visible to managers, service owners and political masters up above? How do we measure what success and what outcomes actually look like and how they're delivered if only there was a technology solution to help us with that. And I'm sure Robert again might be talking to some of that a little bit later. But the whole concept of managing of outcomes is paramount, not just in the COVID world, but also thinking to some of the guidance that came out for the civil service earlier in the year when the spending round was published. We've got the whole initiative around focus on outcomes. When you're spending money, what are the outcomes you're trying to drive? How do you better illustrate those? And how do you define what success looks like? That's all from me for now. I'm going to hand back to Robert now to continue.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. That was really interesting and great to get some of that sort of boots on the ground level insight into the challenges that the organizations face. So when we look at sort of Windows Virtual Desktop, just to take a little bit of a step back, and again, not to teach anyone on this call how to suck eggs, but it's important to answer the question of sort of why desktop virtualization in the first place. And obviously, one of the appeals has always been that ability to separate the horsepower and the compute operations from any user data, and then by separating those users' applications, data, and operating system, hosting each of these in a remote server environment, you can then centrally manage all those resources without compromising sort of any sort of security or compliance concerns. You could also ensure that those virtual machines are always running in close proximity to any apps or services that are connected to your data center to obviously improve the performance. But traditionally, though, desktop virtualization has often been complex and expensive to set up and manage. It can often take weeks or even months to get a successful implementation up and running and actually out into the hands of users. And when it was finally ready for use, users often suffered from a subpar user experience compared to, say, a rich, locally provisioned desktop, particularly with regard to productivity applications. So Windows Virtual Desktop seeks to take all those headaches and limitations away. So Windows 10 and Office 365 are the core products and services, if you like, that are delivered to your end users, and they were built hand in hand to provide the most productive and most secure experience while reducing the complexity and ultimately seeking to sort of lower that total cost of ownership. It's designed to help your employees stay as productive as possible inside that virtualized experience, whether they're choosing to consume that via a laptop, a desktop, a phone, a tablet, or from a browser. It was designed to give them the same experience as if they were sat in front of a physical provisioned PC, sort of sat in a traditional office environment. It was also designed to simplify the management and provisioning in terms of being able to access corporate data and applications, and also, as I've already alluded to reduce the costs and the resources associated with setting up and managing that sort of traditional on-premise infrastructure. So no longer are you having to go and provision servers and provision for potentially a peak level of demand that you only hit on certain occasions, but instead you're able to scale dynamically as you need to. And that was sort of one of the main criteria and one of the sort of ideas behind Windows Virtual Desktop when it was first envisioned, was this idea that it can deliver the only multi-session Windows 10 experience that's virtualized in the cloud, always up to date, scales as you need it to, and is not just available to your users, but is also a great experience for them as well. It's there to ensure that everyone can access their same desktop with the same applications, the same files, the same settings, whether they're choosing to use their laptop, their phone, their iPad, or a combination of all of those, and then giving them access to those files and applications in a secure and managed and compliant way. it's also allows you to provision an environment in hours and days rather than weeks and months. So you don't need to wait for those physical servers to be delivered and then install operating systems and application software and brokers and all of the other pieces that make up a sort of traditional RDS environment. You simply, from an IT perspective, your IT team simply log into to the Azure portal and can then provision desktops as they need to in a dynamic and easy fashion. As I alluded to, it's able to be deployed and scaled quickly and easily. Back in the day, those provisioning and managing of remote desktops environments, it did take a long time to get them not just deployed, but actually out and deployed effectively at scale. And the management experience of being able to manage everything from inside the Azure portal really helps sort of streamline that whole process. You're able to bring your existing Windows Server and desktop apps with you. You're also able to use third-party management planes if there was a need to do so. So although the Windows Virtual Desktop sort of native plane for, inside Azure is absolutely fantastic and does exactly what you'd need it to. If you have made a large skill investment or financial investment into Citrix as an example, then you can bring parts of that with you to give you a better management experience inside the cloud. But when we look at who and sort of the who and the why around how you should move to Windows Virtual Desktop, it really lends itself to a number of specific use cases, a number of which are applicable inside government. So when you look at sort of any organization, government obviously fits firmly into this bucket that has requirements around security principles or regulations or any sort of legal requirement to have a particular security package around their environment, then Windows Virtual Desktop really lends itself well to that. As I mentioned, it has this sort of it has at its core the principles of a traditional RDS implementation of separating and aggregating user data, operating system and physical hardware, but it allows you to always have that control over where that user data is and how that user accesses it. So although I'm going to show you in a moment a bit of a demo of how users can access their Windows Virtual Desktop from a number of different devices and sort of ways forward, fundamentally the protection is underneath that user layer. So although the user gets a great experience and access to everything that they need, on the back end you've got complete control over the regulation and the sort of provisioning of that. It was obviously also incredibly useful towards any organization that needs to scale up a remote workforce quickly, or that is now having to deal with the challenge of a larger percentage of remote workers. So something that we've seen an awful lot of is organizations that perhaps were looking at a remote working policy and strategy and expanding out on that, but the whole COVID situation has accelerated those plans to the point where they may have been planning to do something over the next sort of 12 to 18 months, but actually as soon as COVID hit, they needed to find a way to stand up a secure and compliant remote working environment in a matter of days rather than months. And Windows Virtual Desktop really lends itself well to that, because it's obviously being provisioned from the Azure cloud. It can be provisioned, managed and set up remotely. Your users can then just log in via a URL if they choose to go via a web browser or via an app, which I'll show in a moment. But it means that you can you don't need to care around what device your user has access to in order to consume that same compliant and performant desktop that you would want to provision them if they were sat in a traditional environment, sat at a physical PC at a physical desk. You can now deliver that same sort of capability out. And as I mentioned right at the start, this session isn't designed to be a technical deep dive. We do have some further information available at the end of this session and afterwards as to how all of this works from a technical perspective, but from an end user perspective, you get this wonderful experience of just being able to log into the same desktop across a number of different devices and sort of access mechanisms, but being presented with exactly the same desktop experience, irrespective of which route you choose to go down. And again, there are really sort of 9 key reasons that it's relatively easy to make a really strong business case for a move to Windows Virtual Desktop. So first of all is this idea of removing local infrastructure. This allows you to sort of free yourself from your data center and from that cycle of capital investment followed by sweating assets before it takes another big investment and all of the effort that then has to go around provisioning and setting those new systems up. It gives you resilience and availability, so it allows you to take everything to the cloud in terms of the desktop experience, the applications that you'll serve to your users, and it provides that sort of inherent resilience and availability alongside easily applying full business continuity and disaster recovery measures and allowing you to move high priority workloads into highly performant and scalable systems. It allows you to scale both up and down in pretty much instantly to make sure you meet the demand at whether you've got a particular need for additional capacity at year end or month end or at a key point during the day or the month. It allows you to scale that capacity so that you're not provisioning for the peak 100% of the time. You're only provisioning for the capability and the horsepower effectively that you need at the moment that you need it. It helps protect your confidential data. It's all sort of secured in the usual way inside that virtual desktop environment, and it means that it can keep that data from being on an individual device. So your users still get all access to all of their files and apps and everything else that they need, but that data isn't sitting on a physical device that can be left on a train or damaged, and then complexity around having to get that user a new device. Now any user can log in on to their Windows Virtual Desktop system on whatever device that they choose to, and again you can put controls around that, and there's further sort of deeper technical discussions that we could have around additional measures that you might want to put in place to sort of not limit but control that access, but fundamentally the principle is that they can access their desktop environment from any device that you've said is okay. And that centralized management piece is really key, because that allows you to manage those devices from one location and make a change in one location as well. So if you need to deliver applications into users, you can just upload put that application into the Windows Virtual Desktop environment that user has access to, and then that will appear and they can access it as normal. You can also deliver applications into the Windows Virtual Desktop environment from your on-premise data center. So if you were talking, as Aaron alluded to earlier, around that working in a hybrid world, you are able to do that and to deliver applications into there in the same ways that you would have done into your traditional RDS environment. And probably one of the couple of key points to sort of end on for this little piece is Windows 7 is obviously the was the backbone of a number of public sector and governmental organisations. That has obviously gone end of support in January of this year. But we also know that a number of organisations haven't necessarily finished all of their planning to move wholesale into that Windows 10 world. Windows Virtual Desktop gives you effectively free extended security updates for Windows 7 environments. So it's possible that if you're not quite there, if you're not quite ready to make the move to a full Windows 10 deployment for your entire organization, you can but because potentially of maybe around some sort of legacy application compatibility issue or something like that, you can run a virtual Windows 7 environment out of Windows Virtual Desktop that's hosting those legacy applications and serving those users. You still get all the benefits of that central management and ease of deployment and scale, but then it buys you that extra time in a supported and compliant environment to get all of your ducks in a row and everything ready to then make the move to a full Windows 10 implementation, either in a traditional sense or again in a Windows Virtual Desktop environment. And from a cost perspective, the good news is the vast majority of governmental organisations are already licensed for the rights and the ability to use Windows Virtual Desktop. So often there's no additional licensing costs. The only additional cost would be the Azure compute and storage that you're consuming to run the service. But we find that can make this really cost effective and really attractive to a number of organizations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move quickly into just a very short demo to show you really the user experience of Windows Virtual Desktop. Again, it's not to go into the technical ins and outs of how this is working. It's to show you what that end user experience would be like. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to end the slideshow very briefly, and hopefully here you'll see a desktop environment, and the key are these two little icons down on the left hand side. So just to save time today, I've set these up ahead of time, but I'll walk through what they are. So one is going to be accessing a Windows Virtual Desktop environment via a Windows app, and the other is accessing via a browser, which could be on a Windows device or anything else. So let's start with the app, and we'll show you what the experience is like there. So I just double click on my remote desktop icon, and this is now going to go and launch the login and the access to Windows Virtual Desktop. So this will show me all of the different desktop environments that I have access to. There's just one here today, but you could have a user that has access to more than one potentially. I just double click again to log into that, and that's now going to connect me to this remote desktop environment. It's logging me in, and that is now into my Windows Virtual Desktop. And as you'll see, it looks like a full rich client desktop experience. You can personalize the background should you choose, and you get the same Windows experience that you would get from a rich client PC. So you can see here I've got all my apps pinned, I've got services, I've got everything ready to go. So let's start with what's probably the ubiquitous app for everyone across most organizations, which is Outlook. Traditionally, this can be quite difficult to run inside a sort of an RDS environment. It can be not quite as quick as you'd like. Users don't get access to everything, but hopefully the demo gods will be kind, and I'll show you. So I open up Outlook. That's launching the full client of Outlook, and that's it. I'm into my Outlook. I've got full access to my calendars, shared calendars from people inside my team. I can look at groups. I can go and see what a particular individual is doing just to see. And it really is this quick. There's some wonderful technology at the back of this that's powering that helps power Windows Virtual Desktop, that makes these Office applications as quick and as easy as they are. But your users can get access into this environment in minutes or hours, and as you can see, everything that you would normally expect happens. So you still get all of your pop-ups, all of your logins, and all of that sort of stuff. At the risk of some form of Teams inception, you can also run Teams from inside Windows Virtual Desktop as well. And as you can see, that is a quick and compliant experience as well. So I'm straight into Teams. I can see my team calendar. I can see what's going on, join meetings, make calls, do everything that you would normally expect a user to do. And again, this is all built in the Windows Virtual Desktop environment and delivered to your end users. You've got full access to the web, as you'd expect as well, so you can go and look at different things. You can go and access all of your Office 365 services, whether that's SharePoint or Yammer or whatever it is that you need to access. But I just wanted to show sort of how the experience works across more than one access mechanism. So as I mentioned, I'm currently logged in via the app, but what I'm going to now do is move to the browser. But just to show you how this works. So Outlook is an app that I use a lot, so I want easy access to that. So I'm going to stick Outlook on my desktop there, so I've got a nice easy link to it. And also, I'm not really a fan of that picture. As lovely as Seattle was, actually I want a picture of London today, so we're going to go and change that experience. So I'm now in I'm still in my desktop, but I can personalize and customize that as I need to. So all I'm going to do now is log off of that and close out of that system, and now I'm going to go and access my same desktop environment via a web browser. So again, it's just single click to load into the, because I've pinned it to the taskbar. And again, you'll get a very similar experience to what you saw from the app, but this is all running inside a browser. So it's just asking me to log in because I haven't been logged in for a while. It did remember my password there, as you saw, but I'm just going to log in again just to make sure. And this will now go and load up the same list of desktops as you saw before. So I'm just accessing into the same environment, and that's now going to go connect and launch into that, but now, as I mentioned, from a browser. So this could be accessed from any device that your user had access to if they didn't have a Windows device to hand. Again, because I've logged in via here previously, I've asked it to remember my username and password, but that can be configured as you need as well. And then that just again logs me in. As you can see, from a browser, there's just, I think, one click more to be able to access the same environment via a browser. But as you can see, it's exactly the same environment. All of those changes that I made are still there because that's a persistent desktop that I've got access to. And if I launch Outlook again, that's now, you saw how quick that launched and how easily that was launching Outlook from closed into a browser window, and it really was that quick. And again, I've got access to all of the same experiences, all of the same capabilities that I had consuming it from the application. You can do the same customization efforts. You can do the same. You can still do Teams calls and all of that sort of wonderful stuff. Just to show how quickly an Office application looks. So maybe you're needing to create a Word document, so it's really quick to just open Word. And as you can see, if I want to go and look at an document, this document isn't stored locally on this device. It was stored on SharePoint. And this has gone and found it, brought it back, and opened it in a matter of seconds rather than anything else. So, and one of the key criteria for Windows Virtual Desktop was that sort of first class and best in class Office 365 experience, and it really does deliver. It gives your users that fully compliant, fully productive, fully rich experience, irrespective of whatever device they choose to consume it from. So I'd hoped to be able to show you as well access from an iPad and a purely sort of consumption device, but as you can see, with the ability to access via a browser or via the app, you are able to get a great experience on whichever device you choose to use. It's also worth saying that I'm very lucky to live in the country in the middle of nowhere, which is absolutely wonderful most of the time, but leads to a fairly terrible full broadband connection. But as you can see, even on the bit of string that I'm using, it's really quick and really compliant, and there's no problem accessing any of those. So appreciate that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But that just gives you a bit of insight into the end user experience. It is worth saying, as I mentioned, that this isn't designed to give you a technical deep dive into the full technical ins and outs of how it's delivering that. We do have some further information available for you following this presentation, which does answer of that. So when we look at the next steps and sort of where to go next, we find that most organizations fit into one of these three buckets. So if you'd like to find some further information, we have a landing page that will be sent out to all of you, which will include a copy of this recording, and alongside some further guidance and information around Windows Virtual Desktop from a high level, but all the way down to the technical ins and outs of how it does what it does, and what our particular service would look like in terms of configuring and getting this out there for you. There's also a link to some really useful FAQs. These have been compiled from conversations with a number of governmental organisations and beyond. So hopefully any questions that you have will be answered by those, but if not, there is also a form and a section on there where you can contact us and ask any questions that you might need, and they can be of a technical, a procedural, or a process nature. We're here to help, so please do feel free to ask any questions that you might have. There'll also be a recording to this presentation and some further information outside of the technical stuff on there as well. Now, if you've already done a little bit of digging and already understand that you'd like to try implementing Windows Virtual Desktop and try to get this out to your users, then we're actually offering free consultation workshops off of the back of this webinar to any attendees. That's a half-day workshop where we'll help you understand what Windows Virtual Desktop could look like for you, and how best you might be able to make use of that. And if you're already one of those organizations that has already potentially dipped a toe or is already done their sort of investigation and due diligence around what Windows Virtual Desktop could do for you, and are now just looking to transform at speed, then we have a couple of options to help get you up and running on Windows Virtual Desktop really quite quickly. A standard deployment, for example, takes about 3 days, and that would then allow you to scale out and get your users up and running if you need to. All of our services are available from an ease of procurement perspective. They're all available via G-Cloud, and you could also purchase obviously directly, but also via the Microsoft commercial marketplace. But outside of that, we are really here to help. So if you do have any questions or any concerns, then we'd love the opportunity to talk with you and understand how we and Microsoft can help you make that move to Windows Virtual Desktop. So that is the end of the presentation for today. Hopefully you found that useful. Apologies that we weren't able to take questions during the call, but we will be sharing the capability for you to be able to ask any questions that you need, as we've already discussed, along with links to that landing page, and also links to further information and a recording of this presentation. If you do have any questions in the meantime, then please feel free to reach out to myself or the team at wvd@sol-tech.com, or via your Microsoft account team who will be able to assist you. So with that, I'll say thank you very much to Aaron, and thank you very much to everyone else for attending. Have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Many thanks.
Pleasure.